All right, it's time for your Week 12 post-practice report. Brendan London here alongside with the New York Post sports columnist Mark Cannizzaro. Mark, the sun is shining on our faces right now, and it's also shining because it looks like Jaxson Dart is trending in the right direction in the concussion protocol. He could potentially play Sunday. No official word just yet, but you saw him out there for a little bit during warm-ups. What were your initial thoughts?
I think the expectation here across the board, Brandon, is he will play on Sunday. As we saw, the media portion obviously is just calisthenics, warm-up, stretching, that kind of thing. But, you know, he was doing his jogging and running like everybody else was. I spoke to a number of players in the locker room where we just got out of, and the feel that you get there's a total expectation he'll be back on Sunday. You know, this is a step-by-step thing, that the whole concussion protocol. You know, today he was in a quote-unquote non-contact practice, but which is semantics because the quarterbacks, as you know, wear the red jerseys and nobody can touch them anyway. So I suspect that tomorrow he will probably be, you know, quote-unquote upgraded in practice where it's not non-contact, even though it will be non-contact, if that makes any sense. So I think he's progressing, and I'll be shocked if he's not playing on Sunday, especially listening to the guys I spoke to in the room. And I just know that there's a lot of I felt a lot of energy talking to some of the guys, offensive linemen, receivers. Everybody's pretty stoked to have him back, even though the Jameis experience was fun with a lot of respect last week. You know, at the end of the day, we've all seen, you know, how different the Giants look offensively with Dart in there. And I think everybody's looking forward to getting that back again.
If you're Mike Kafka, do you call this game with Jaxson Dart pre-concussion, or do you call it like Jameis Winston last week against the Packers?
Well, I am very fascinated to see how Mike Kafka, the head coach, calls this game with Jaxson versus Mike Kafka, the offensive coordinator. It's interesting. I was just speaking to Paul Schwartz, our colleague, you know, the beat writer here for us, the Giants beat writer, and you know, everybody was all over Brian Daboll for you know, the number of design runs that he called for Jaxson, but the reality is Kafka was the one that was calling those plays, right? And now he's the head coach. Does he continue to do that? Is there a little bit more caution? I suspect there'll be a little more caution. I don't think you're going to see that much, you know, running with abandon. Certainly on the off-schedule plays, I am 100% sure that Jackson's going to be much more conscious about sliding instead of laying his shoulder into somebody. I do expect that there'll be a handful of design runs because that's part of his superpower. Will they call as many as they were before he was hurt? I doubt it. But it will be an interesting dynamic to see how Kafka calls the game as the head coach. I mean, listen, there's been a lot of speculation about maybe, you know, Daboll's firing, you know, a part of that being the fact that Jaxson got hurt, which I think is nonsense and ridiculous. But I mean, everybody's throwing their stamp on these kind of things. But, you know, as I said, at the end of the day, Kafka was the guy calling the plays. You know, certainly Daboll was not vetoing them, and why would he? Because it's successful. So,
and I see now if he gets Jaxson Dart back, I wonder if he does take a page out of that game plan of the Packers game with the Jameis. One, it was a lot of runs on first down. They were predominantly heavy with the run on first down. Two, they did a lot of quick game as well. I wonder if you add that as an extension to the run to get the ball out of Jaxson Dart's hands as fast as possible. We know how the Detroit Lions like to play a lot of man-to-man press in your face and then get after the quarterback with pressure. But, okay, the game plan surrounding Jaxson Dart is one thing, but who will he be throwing to is another thing. Isaiah Hodgins just got off the plane, a week ago, and he was able to lead all the receivers, including the Packers receivers, in that Week 11 loss. We both got a chance to talk with Isaiah. I'll kind of piggyback off of you. Like, were you impressed with what he was able to do and pick up so fast?
I was. I mean, personally, I was impressed. Now, I don't play receiver, nor am I a pro football player, but what I got out of today, and obviously you and I both spoke to Isaiah for a while, but I also spoke to a handful of the other receivers, Wandell, Robinson, and I spoke to Slay at the end of the session over there, and I was kind of asking them to put themselves into Isaiah's shoes with 0 reps and 0 practice, and they both were kind of blown away at his production. We think we all know Isaiah a little bit from his previous stay here. He's a super conscientious guy, a very smart guy. You have to be smart to be able to come in here. It's easy for the outsider to say, oh, well, he was a receiver here a couple of years ago, and they could pick it up, and it's the same stuff. It isn't really the same stuff. Some of it's the same, but the terminology is different, and and everything's game plan specific too. So for him to come out there and have 5 catches, and some very significant catches in that game, is incredibly impressive, and it impressed the people around him inside that locker room.
I think, selfishly, it didn't impress me that much, because if you remember 2022, when he came in after the trade deadline, when they picked him from someone else's practice squad, he led the team in receptions for that last run.
The playoff run was great, and I think he had 8 catches for 105. I want to say in the Pittsburgh game,
yes.
In the playoff game that they won, which is the last significant game I feel like they've played. Listen, I get it. He was productive before, but I think it was fun to see.
Yeah.
Again, you and I were around him. I think what's kind of cool about it is just the uncertainty in this game, and you've lived it a bit. And in your playing time when you were not a starter or whatever, you're trying to get off practice squads and things like that. I spoke to him about being at home, and do you ever have that moment where you're like, even though he's only 28, 27 years old, I want to say, are you going to get another chance? He spent the entire year here up until last week on a practice squad, San Francisco and then Pittsburgh. And, he did say that he felt some of those vibes a little bit and those fears. It's just human nature. He talked about using the jugs machine and running routes and stuff like that. He has a jugs machine at home in Arizona where he lives. Yeah. And he literally said he had his wife and his son, putting balls in the jugs machine, out in the backyard. So that would have been quite a scene to see. So, he's done everything he can to stay ready, and it showed on Sunday last week.
If you stay ready, you never have to get ready. And he spoke with me, and you guys will see this on the Blue Rush pregame show, that how he's already dealt with the business of the sport. So we talk about that fear of that uncertainty of not knowing if you're going to get caught up, if you're going to get cut, if you'll be home in Arizona. You've dealt with the business side of it. So I look at it as, I think it almost worked into his favor, his story, his journey, because you go in there, and if they bring you in and they have you starting after you got here on a Thursday and you're starting Sunday, this could be the first time the Giants really looked at him and say, hey, we need you. Outside of that 2022 playoff run, to where he kind of went and took those reps. He went and took those touchdowns. But this is a situation to where this could be the first time the Giants actually called him and was like, hey, we're sending the back signal up. We need you to come in and kind of save this receiving core right now.
He said that, he did not expect to play nearly as many plays as he played on Sunday. But he said when he looked at the game plan, he's like, it looks like I am going to play quite a few plays, And, I think he told me he thought maybe get in maybe 20 plays, 15, 18, 20 plays. And he played, I want to say he played close to 50. And obviously the production was there, and they were clutch catches. And he said once he made that first catch, he got the jitters out, and he was glad to get that out of the way. And then you're not thinking about it, and you just get into the flow of the game.
You're expecting 20 plays, you play 50, oxygen tank. That's the only way you're getting through that game.
He wasn't in Denver, right?
Yeah, so. Oh, he really would have passed out then, but congratulations to him. We'll wait to see what the official news is for Jaxson Dart when that is released. But for Mark Cannizzaro, Brendan London here, thanks for watching.